The work manager called on a Tuesday morning and said something I had not expected to hear from anyone, let alone from her. "Mr. Sutton, I need you to come in today." The world till to mention this call to anyone at home. I had just come in from the paddock. My boots were still muddy. I had a cup of tea going cold on the kitchen bench and the radio on low, the way I keep it in the mornings when the house is quiet, and I have not yet had a reason to break the silence. Evelyn Cross had been managing my accounts at the Westpac branch in Oamaru for 9 years. The world tilted sideways. She was steady, methodical, the kind of person who called when something needed to be called about and not before. In 9 years, she had never once called me before 10 in the morning. She had never once told me to come alone, Evelyn. I said, "What's this about?" A pause. Short but enough. "I'd rather go through it in person, Mr. Sutton. Can you come in at 11? The world tilted sideways. I told her I could. I set the phone down on the bench and stood there for a moment looking out the kitchen window at the driveway. My daughter's car was parked behind the old ute, same as every morning for the past 16 months. My name is Owen Sutton. I am 67 years old. I spent 41 years running Sutton Agricultural Contracting out of the Waitaki district, baling the world television silage the full seasonal round. 3 machines, 6 staff at peak season, a reputation built on showing up on time and doing the job properly. The world tilted sideways. I had survived a drought that nearly broke me in the late 90s, a market correction in 2008 that took 2 of my competitors out entirely, the word knee reconstruction that kept me out of the cab for 3 months. I was not a man who rattled easily, but Evelyn's voice that morning had something in I had not heard before. Something careful. The world tilted sideways, got in the ute, and drove down the valley toward town. The Westpac branch sits on Thames Street, same building it's been in for as long as I can remember. I walked in just before 11. The whirl me at the counter and took me through to the office at the back, the one with the frosted glass and the door that closes properly. She offered me tea. I said no. "Thank you for coming in so quickly," she said, and sat down and opened a folder on the desk between us. "Evelyn, tell me." She turned the folder so I could read it, a summary of transactions. The world tilted a columns with dates, amounts, and account references. My business check account, my personal savings. A pattern that ran back as far as I could see from the first page, nearly a year. "The world flagged these when I was running a routine review last week," she said. "There are transfers here that don't match your usual activity pattern. Small amounts, most of them. The world to $300 and $1,500. But when I added them up across both accounts, the world to," she slid a summary sheet across the desk. $38,400. I stared at the number for a moment. Then I looked at the dates. "These are all weekdays," I said. "Yes." The world tilted of them between 9 in the morning and noon. I thought about my mornings. Out the door by 6:30 most days. On the machinery or down at the yards or driving between jobs. The world tilted sideways, Nahum to afternoon at the earliest. "The logins were from your home IP address," Evelyn said. Her voice was careful, the way you speak to someone who's about to have something taken from them. "The device used is consistent with a home laptop, not your phone. The world always accessed internet banking from your phone when you're in the field. I had a desktop computer in the office at the back of the house. My daughter used the kitchen bench. Her husband used the spare bedroom he called his workspace." I did not say any of this out loud. The world tilted sideways. I said slowly, "Are you telling me someone in my house has been accessing my accounts?" She closed the folder. "I'm telling you what the records show." The world too deserved to hear it before I was obliged to take any formal steps. I asked her to print everything, every transaction, every login timestamp, every IP record she had. She handed me a thick envelope across the desk and held my gaze for a moment. "There's one more thing," she said. "About 6 weeks ago I received a call from a solicitor's firm in Duden, the woman named Heather Somerville. She said she was doing background inquiries on behalf of a client and asked some general questions about the ownership structure of your business, whether there was a trust in place, who held power of attorney." The air in the room changed. "She wouldn't name her client," Evelyn said. "I didn't provide any information. But I thought you should know someone was making those inquiries." The worm along State Highway 83 and did not take in a single detail of the drive. The valley was green the way it only gets in early spring, the Waitaki broad and slow below the road. The world tilted side view I had been looking at for 40 years. I did not see any of it. The house was a 1950s weatherboard on 10 acres outside of town. The world tin bought it in my 30s and done most of the renovation work myself over 2 decades, re-piled the foundations, ricklad the exterior, rebuilt the sleepout that now served as the spare bedroom. The world tilt was not a grand house, but it was mine, completely, and I had known every board of it for 30 years. My son-in-law's car was in the driveway alongside my daughter's when I pulled in. The whirl's unusual for a Tuesday. He was normally out or claimed to be. I went inside through the back door. My daughter was at the kitchen bench. She looked up and smiled the way she always did. Easy and familiar. You're back early, Dad. The whir ends, I said. We're thinking of going up to see Mum's sister this weekend, if that's all right. Just overnight? Fine, I said. I walked through to the back office, shut the door. The world tilted sideways, sat at my desk without turning on the computer. The envelope from Evelyn was in my jacket pocket. I set it on the desk and spread the pages out and read through them the way I read contracts, slowly. The world tilted sideways, pattern $38,400, 14 months, weekday mornings, 9 to noon. I thought about the solicitor from Dunedin. I thought about power of attorney. I thought about a word I had not thought in many years. Protect yourself. The world not say anything at dinner that evening. My daughter had made a roast. My son-in-law talked about a contract he was supposedly close to signing. The same contract he had been close to signing for 6 weeks. My daughter refilled the water glasses and asked if I had watched the rugby. Normal, comfortable. The kind of normal that only feels wrong when you know what is underneath it. After dinner, I went back to the office and searched online for property lawyers in Oamaru. Not estate planning. The world set protection. A woman named Frances Ellery came up at the top of 2 separate results. 32 years in practice, property law, trust structures, elder law. The War Office had a receptionist who answered at 8:30 the next morning. I had an appointment by 9. The world tilted sideways. Frances Ellery was in her mid-60s, white-haired and compact, with the kind of attention that comes from spending decades listening to people in difficult situations without flinching. The World to office was above a bookshop on Itchen Street and smelled like old paper and lemon oil. I set the envelope from Evelyn on her desk and told her everything from the beginning. The phone call. The World told her transactions, the inquiry from the Dunedin solicitor. She read through the pages without speaking. She marked 2 dates with a pencil. She underlined a figure. Then she set the papers down and looked at me. You haven't confronted your daughter or her husband. Good. Don't? Not yet. She leaned back in her chair. Owen, the World to ask you something directly. Has your daughter or her husband ever asked about the business? What happens to it when you retire? Who inherits? Whether you have a will in place? The World tilted. About 8 months ago, a Sunday afternoon, my daughter had brought it up after lunch, almost in passing. Just thinking about things, Dad. You've built up so much. The would be good to know there's a plan. Her husband had been sitting across the table. The World tilted sideways. He had nodded in the way he did when he had suggested something to her beforehand and was waiting to see how it landed. The World tilted sideways. I had told them I had a will from 2012 that probably needed updating, that I had not thought much about succession for the business. The World tilted sideways. Law had asked what would happen to the contracting operation if I became unable to manage it. He had used the phrase unable to manage. I had taken it as a reasonable question. The World responsible one. About 8 months ago, I said my son-in-law asked what would happen to the business if I became unable to manage it. The World tilted sideways. Francis nodded. And the solicitor who called your bank manager, Heather Somerville in Dunedin, her firm specializes in family protection orders. The World tilted process by which a family member can apply to become the welfare guardian or property manager of someone deemed incapable of managing their own affairs. She paused. The word process involves demonstrating that the person in question is showing signs of diminished capacity. Confusion, poor financial decision-making, unexplained behavior. I looked at her. The $38,000 disappearing from a business account, she said quietly, could, in certain documents, be made to look like the owner making inexplicable financial choices. The room was very still. They were building a paper trail, I said. It was not a question. I cannot say that with certainty. But the combination you're describing, the financial activity, the inquiry about power of attorney, the World question about your capacity, that pattern has a shape I have seen before. She pulled a legal pad from her drawer. The World, the question is what you want to do about it. I told her I wanted to do all of it. The World fences laid it out over the next hour. First, change all account passwords that evening and set up 2-factor authentication through my mobile phone only, not the home network. Second, the World attacked Evelyn at Westpac and asked her to preserve all access logs, login records, and transaction histories before anything could be altered. Third, the transfer the business interests and the property into a family trust with myself as sole trustee and sole beneficiary during my lifetime, managed through a properly structured trust deed. Fourth, the World tilted a forensic accountant to produce a documented report of the losses. Fifth, and she said this carefully, I needed to begin thinking about the living arrangements. The Residential Tenancies Act, she said. Your daughter and her husband are not tenants. They have no lease, they pay no rent, they have no tenancy rights. They are guests. You can ask them to leave with 90 days written notice, or 42 days if you require the property for your own purposes. Either way, the World is entirely within your legal right. They're my daughter and her husband, I said. They are, she said. And what this evidence suggests they have done is also a criminal matter. The world till choose to pursue it. She let that sit in the room for a moment. I'm not here to tell you how to handle your family, she said. The world tilted sideways to tell you what your options are. I signed her engagement agreement. I shook her hand in the doorway, walking out to the ute in the early morning cool. I felt something I had not felt in 16 months. I felt like the man who had built that business. The world tilted sideways. I moved carefully. I handled everything from the ute cab parked at a job in the Mackenzie or in the car park behind the library. I changed every account password. The world froze the transaction portal to my mobile number only and flagged the accounts for manual review. Francis referred me to a forensic accountant named Peter Galbraith, who worked out of a gray office building on Tyne Street and said very little but wrote down everything. At home I was ordinary. Dinner, the news, small talk. The world tilted sideways. In-law showed me a brochure for a franchise opportunity he was considering. My daughter made scones on Saturday morning and left some on a plate on the bench. The world tilted sideways, which she had been doing since about month 4 of their stay. Small gestures that feel generous until you understand the weight behind them. The world 5th evening I came in from a late job up near Curro and went to the office to check the mail. The filing cabinet was shut, but the top drawer was not fully closed. Not wrenched open. The world tilted sideways. Just open a centimeter in the way a drawer is when someone opens it carefully and does not quite push it flush on the way out. I sat down in front of the cabinet for a while without touching it. Then I called Frances on her mobile. We move faster, I said. Peter Galbraith called 6 days later. The world parked at the rest area on the Waitaki Dam Road, eating a sandwich I had bought at the Four Square because I had stopped wanting to eat lunch at my own table. 41,000. The world tilted $200, he said. Final total. I found 3 transactions Evelyn's initial review did not capture. All traceable to the same device, same home IP, all occurring in the same time window. I can have a full written report to Francis by Friday. Is that enough? The world police complaint. Yes. For a criminal prosecution that depends on the police and the evidence. But you have a clear and documented record. A pause. Owen, there is one more thing. In February, the world tilted sideways. Someone used your business profile to pull a credit summary on your personal accounts through a commercial data service. It is a lawful inquiry if the person has the relevant login credentials. The word it tells you is that someone was building a detailed picture of your financial position. Assets, liabilities. The world tilted sideways, the whole picture. I thanked him and sat for a while looking at the river through the windscreen. I had learned to read land a long time ago. Where the water moved, where the soil was thin. Where a paddock that looked reliable in March would be underwater by July. My son-in-law had been reading my finances the way I read country, looking for where things might give way. The Francis called on Thursday. The trust was ready for execution. The world tilted signed the documents in her office on a Friday morning, 2 hours. Property, business interests, machinery, investment accounts, everything transferred into a professionally managed trust structure. The worth myself as sole trustee during my lifetime and distribution upon my death going to a list of registered charities and a modest amount to my nephew and Nelson, who called every few months for no reason other than to talk. Frances walked me to the door. The notice to vacate is drafted, she said. What, you can serve it when you're ready? I'll do it next week, I said. Tuesday. She nodded. And have you thought about whether you want to involve the police? The world tilted. Thought about it for a week. Every angle. My daughter had grown up on that property. She had learned to drive in the top paddock. The world tilted sideways. She had called me from a hospital in Christchurch 7 years ago when she had been in a minor car accident and her voice had been young and scared and needing her father to say everything was going to be fine. Not yet, I said. The evidence is preserved. If she comes after the trust, I'll use it. If they leave quietly, I'll carry it. Frances nodded. The world tilted sideways. Some things don't need a lawyer to decide. The weekend passed the way weekends do when you are carrying something the rest of the house knows nothing about. The world tilted sideways. I fixed a gate hit that had been loose for a month. I watched the Saturday sport. I drove up to the top of the property in the afternoon and sat on the tailgate looking out over the valley. The world tilted, the Taki below and the hills going purple in the late sun, the kind of view that had held me to this place for 40 years. The world tilted sideways. Sunday evening my son-in-law mentioned that his contract in Christchurch was looking solid. If it came through, he and my daughter would probably need to find a place down there fairly quickly. The world tilted sideways. He said it with the ease of someone who has been rehearsing it, and with the implication that I should feel the loss of them going. I listened and thought, you may be moving sooner than you expect. The world tilted in sleep. On Sunday night I sat in the office with the lamp off, listening to the house, thinking about what I knew. About Tuesdays and Thursdays 9 to noon. The whirl I was in the ute or on the machinery. About my son-in-law in the spare bedroom with a laptop and my login credentials and a plan. The word a solicitor in Dunedin asking about power of attorney on behalf of a client she would not name. They had looked at me and seen an asset with a timeline. The world tilted sideways. 67 years old, no partner, one daughter, a business and a property that would have to go somewhere eventually. They had made a calculation. They had started moving money in small amounts. The world testing whether I would notice, growing more confident when I did not. The hardest part was not the money. The hardest part was that it had been so deliberate. I turned on the lamp and wrote the figure on a notepad. $41,200, 16 months. The world tilted sideways. While I believed my daughter was at home looking after the house while her husband looked for work. Then I closed the pad and went to bed and slept better than I had in weeks. The world tilted sideways. Tuesday afternoon I came home at 5. Dinner was already started. My son-in-law was at the bench peeling vegetables, which he did perhaps once a month and always when he wanted something to feel normal. Then my daughter was setting the table. They both looked up and smiled. The world tilted sideways. The meal was good. My daughter had made a lamb dish from something she had seen online and it was genuinely good. I ate it and thought about how that did not change anything at all. After dinner, the world tilted sideways-in-law leaned back and brought up the Christchurch contract again, more detail this time. Company name, start date. The world tilted sideways. The kind of specific color that comes when someone has been preparing the story for a while. He said if it came through they would try not to disrupt things on their way out. The world be doing you a favor by leaving, he said with a smile that was almost right. I stood and went to the sideboard where I had placed 2 envelopes that morning, though I came back and set one in front of my daughter and one in front of my son-in-law. My son-in-law picked his up and turned it over.
What's this? Read it.
He opened it. I watched his eyes move across the page. The words at the top of the notice were not ambiguous. 90-day notice to vacate. I watched the color shift in his face. The world tilted sideways the way it shifts in old weatherboard when moisture gets into the framing. A subtle change in the surface that tells you something has given way underneath. My daughter looked at her envelope without opening it, then at her husband, then at me. Dad. Her voice was careful. What is this? You've lived here 16 months without contributing to expenses. Though I need you to find alternative accommodation within 90 days. The notice is legal and properly documented. This must be a misunderstanding, my son-in-law said. The world tilted sideways. His voice had shifted into the register of someone who has prepared for several versions of this conversation. We've been dealing with a difficult period. We thought you understood that. The world tilted a few months. You said we could work something out. I said a few months. It has been 16. The white daughter stood. You're asking us to leave. We're your family. You are my family, I said. And you have 90 days. What have we done? My son-in-law said. The world is this actually about? I said his name the way I had when my daughter was a teenager and had brought home someone who was pushing into territory he didn't understand. Firm, clear. No room for negotiation. He stopped. I'm going to the office. At the notice stands. I walked down the hall. Behind me I could hear their voices, low and urgent. The world tilted sideways, the shape of people trying to work out what had happened and what to do next. My son-in-law's voice, then my daughter's, then a silence, then footsteps. The ward I sat at the desk and wrote a detailed note to Francis documenting the evening. Their words, the time, the date, their reactions, I did not enjoy any of it. But I did not regret any of it. The world tilted sideways. The following morning my daughter knocked on the office door at 7. Alone she came in and sat in the chair across the desk without being asked. The world tilted sideways since she was old enough to have things she wanted me to understand. Dad, she said. Something has changed. You were fine with us being here and now there's legal notices. The word understand. I looked at my daughter for a long moment. 37 years old. Her mother's eyes. A habit of looking slightly to the left when she was deciding what to say next. The world to ask you something and I need you to answer me honestly, I said. Has anyone been accessing my accounts through the computer in this house? Her face did something complicated. The word got quite surprised. More like a calculation adjusting itself behind her expression before she chose what to show me. What? No. What makes you think that? The $41,200, I said. 16 months. Weekday mornings while I was out of the house. Logged in from this IP address on a device I don't own. She went quiet. The calculation ran faster behind her eyes. That sounds like a system error, she said finally. Or someone accessing it remotely. You should call the bank. The bank called me, I said. The world still. She looked at her hands. I'm not recording this conversation, I said. I'm not threatening you right now. I'm your father. The world tilting you to tell me the truth. What happened next was a particular kind of silence. Not the silence of someone working out how to prove their innocence. A longer silence. The world till silence of someone who has been caught and is working out which version of events to offer. The 90 days stands, I said. The trust is signed. The accounts are secured. What I'm asking you now is to leave this house and leave my business alone and go and build your own life. That is all I'm asking. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said, but it's mine to make. She left. I heard her in the kitchen with her husband for 20 minutes. Their voices too low for words, the world tilted sideways, but the shape of it clear. Two people deciding on a next move. The following 12 days were a study in pressure applied by people who had known me long enough to know exactly where I might give way. The word force-in-law produced a letter from a counselor in Omaru, a family communications specialist whose name I did not recognize. The world tilted sideways. He said the counselor had suggested a joint session might help resolve the misunderstanding. He set the letter on the kitchen bench where I would see it. I picked it up, read it, set it back down. No. The world tilted sideways. Day 7. My daughter's older cousin arrived at the door in the early evening. He was a solicitor in Wellington apparently and had been in Christchurch for a conference and decided to stop through. The world tilted sideways. He was sitting in the lounge with a cup of tea in a manner that suggested he had been briefed. The world tilted himself as a family friend who had heard there was a bit of a situation and thought he might be able to help everyone see things clearly. The world tilted sideways whether he was there in a professional capacity. He said he was there as family informally. I told him that anything relating to my legal arrangements would need to go through my solicitor. The war appreciated him stopping by. I saw him to the door. The whirl-11. I came downstairs late to get a glass of water and found my son-in-law at the kitchen table with a laptop open and a printed document beside it. He closed the laptop when he saw me. The word before I had seen the heading on the printed page: Criteria for Property Manager Appointment. Protection of Personal and Property Rights Act. I filled my glass at the tap. The word night, I said, and went back upstairs. The next morning I called Frances. Can we move the documentation up? Already done, she said. The trust registration came through yesterday, and Owen, though wanna say, I've seen families do worse things to people they love. You've handled this with more composure than most. I thanked her. The world tilted sideways. Then I sat for a moment looking out the office window at the driveway where my daughter's car sat in the morning light. The world tilted sideways. The thing I kept coming back to was not the money, it was the planning, the patience, the way they had started with small amounts and grown careful when I did not react. The world tilted. My son-in-law had asked about my capacity over a Sunday lunch as though it were a practical matter, a responsible question, the kind of thing concerned family ask. The worry: a solicitor in Dunedin had called my bank to ask about power of attorney, and my daughter had been in this house the whole time. They had looked at me and seen a 67-year-old man alone. The world tilted sideways, and a property and no partner to notice what was happening. They had thought that was enough. They had miscalculated. The world till 26. My daughter knocked on the office door again. But this time it was different from that first morning. The world tilted sideways. She came in and sat down and was quiet for a moment, and then she looked at me, and what was on her face was something I had not seen since she was in her early 20s and had made a decision she knew was wrong and could not find a way out of it on her own. Dad, she said. I'm sorry. I waited. I know what it looks like. I know how it looks. We were in a bad position, financially, worse than I told you. The world Tyrann had debts, significant ones, and he had a plan, and I didn't stop it when I should have, and I told myself it would be short term, that we'd put it back, that you wouldn't notice because the business was doing well. She stopped. I know that's not an excuse. The solicitor in Dunedin, I said. The inquiry about power of attorney. The world tilted sideways. That was Aaron. I knew about it. I didn't stop that either. He said it was just information. Just exploring what options existed. She opened her eyes. Though I know how that sounds. It sounds like you let it happen, I said. She did not argue. That was perhaps the most honest thing she had offered me in 16 months. The 90 days stands, I said. The world tilted sideways. The trust stands. If you want to repair something between us, it starts with you and your husband finding a place of your own and you building the kind of life that doesn't need to come at my expense.
That's where it starts?
The money, she said. We'll pay it back. Yes, I said. You will. Frances will draw up a repayment agreement. You will both sign it. We'll do it properly. She nodded. The world tilted sideways. She stood at the door. She paused, and for a moment she was 12 years old again, standing in a doorway after some smaller version of this same conversation about honesty and its consequences. Sorry, Dad, she said. Though I know, I said. Start packing. The 90th day came on a Thursday. Frances had offered to send someone official. I told her I would handle it myself. The word who's on the property when they loaded the trailer. 3 carloads in a hired trailer on a Saturday. My son-in-law was methodical. The world still had expected. He was methodical when he was focused on something he knew had to be done. My daughter was quiet in a way I had not seen from her before. The world tilt of someone who has run out of moves. I stayed on the veranda. I did not help and I did not obstruct. I watched my daughter carry boxes out of the house I had rebuilt board by board. The word about the other times I had watched her leave. Her first day at Waitaki Girls High School. The day she drove to Dunedin for university. The day she had come back 16 months ago. The world tilted sideways. Austin and their problems, and a story about a rough patch that just needed a few months to smooth out. At the ute, my daughter came to the veranda steps and looked up. "We found a place in Timaru," she said. "It's small, but it's ours." "Good," I said. "Aaron signed the repayment agreement." "I know." The world tilted sideways. Frances sent me the copy. A pause. "I'm going to do better," she said. Not asking, not negotiating, just a woman who understood what she had broken and was saying plainly what she intended about it. The world tilted. "So I said. And I meant it." My son-in-law did not come to the veranda. He waited by the ute and looked at the hills and did not look at me. I did not take that personally. The world tilted. "Some debts do not begin to settle in the short term." They drove out of the driveway and down the road. The sound of the ute faded into the ordinary noise of the morning wind. The world tilted sideways. Oxen were above the ridge, the distant sound of a header working in a paddock further down the valley. The world tilted. Von veranda in the autumn sun, and the house behind me was quiet in exactly the way I had needed it to be quiet for 16 months. The world tilted sideways. That week I fixed everything that had been sitting on my list. I reset the thermostat. I put the furniture back in the arrangement I had always preferred. The world groceries for one without mentally calculating quantities. Small things, significant things. Evelyn called on Monday morning. "The accounts are clean," she said. "Full audit complete." And then, the world tilted side. "Want you to know I debated making that call for nearly 2 weeks. I wasn't certain it was my place." "Evelyn," I said. "It was exactly your place. You have dinner coming your way." Peter Galbraith sent his final report. $41,200. Every transaction documented, every timestamp recorded. The world tilted sideways. The whole thing preserved in Frances's files and available if it was ever needed. I hoped it would not be needed. I thought it probably would not be. About 2 months after the day they left, I drove up to a job near Omarama, a farmstead that the new owners were restoring after decades of neglect. My machinery operator, the world tilted sideways, a man named Gary Thorne, who had been with me for 14 years, walked me around the boundary and showed me where the drainage had been allowed to fail. "You see the way the ground sinks here," he said, the world tilting near the corner post. "That's been settling for years. Someone stopped maintaining it and the water found its own way." I crouched beside him. "Cold soil, rough tussock. The kind of ground that looks solid until you press on it." "Rest of the paddock sound," Gary said. "It is," I said. I stood and looked out across the property. Long view, good bones. There were hills in the distance where the sky was bright and hard and clean. "Someone's going to put a lot of work into this." Gary grinned. "Best kind of job." The world tilted sideways. I thought about ground that looked reliable until it was tested. About the difference between land that had been maintained and land that had been let go. The world tilted sideways. I had spent 40 years reading country, knowing where the weight was being carried, where the drainage had held, where the surface looked fine but the underlying structure had been quietly failing. My son-in-law had read my finances the same way, looking for the soft spots. The world tilted sideways to where things might give under pressure if the pressure was applied slowly and the amounts were kept small enough not to trigger a response. He had miscalculated. The world's hint of because I had more resources, but because he had assumed the surface was the whole story. There was a great deal more underneath. My daughter called in June. We spoke for 25 minutes. She and her husband were settled in Timaru. She had gone back to work teaching aid at a primary school. He was in a workshop role. The world tilted, starting again. The automatic payments had been running for 2 months, $500 a month into the account Frances had nominated. "It'll take a long time," she said. "I will," I said. "That's fine." "Dad," a pause. "I need to say it again. I heard you the first time," I said. "What I need from you now is not more apologies. The world fits the $500 a month and the next 30 years of you being someone I can trust. That is what I need." She was quiet for a moment. "Okay," she said. "Yeah, okay. Call me at Easter." "I will." The world tilted sideways. I sat on the veranda with a cup of tea and watched the light go off the ridge the way it does in the Waitaki Valley in late afternoon. The world tilted sideways, that particular angle that turns everything gold before the shadow comes up from the east. The kind of light that has nothing to prove and does not need anything from you. My nephew in Nelson had called the week before. He called every few months, no agenda, just to talk. We had talked about his renovation project, a batch he was working on up near Abel, Tasman. The world tilted his daughter's swimming and about a trip he and his wife were considering to the South Island. He had not asked me for anything except my time. That, I had thought afterward, is what family is supposed to feel like. A call that costs nothing, a conversation that exists for its own sake. The world tilted sideways. Ellen had gotten her dinner. A long evening at an Italian restaurant on Thames Street where we had talked about her son's new job in Auckland and about the Omarama job and about what the Waitaki would look like in another 20 years. The world tilted sideways. We had not mentioned the manila envelope or the figure on the summary sheet, because there was nothing left to say about it. The accounts were clean, the trust was signed, the house was mine. The world tilted sideways had called with one final note. The solicitor in Dunedin, Heather Somerville, had apparently moved on to other clients. No family protection application had ever been filed. The world tilted sideways. In-law had let it drop when the plan collapsed, or whether they had simply lost momentum when the accounts were locked and the trust was beyond reach, Francis did not know. The world tilted sideways did not matter. The fortification was built. There was nothing left to threaten. The last thing I did that year, on the first clear Saturday in July, was walk through every room of the house. Not to assess anything or fix anything, just to walk through it. The world tilted sideways where I had sat with Evelyn's envelope spread across the desk and felt the world reorganize itself around a number. The world tilted sideways. The kitchen where I had eaten 140 dinners over 16 months with my hands in my lap and questions building behind my eyes. The world tilted sideways. The lounge where my daughter's cousin had sat with his cup of tea and his briefing and his quiet assumption that he could help everyone reach a more comfortable arrangement. The world tilted veranda where I had watched my daughter drive away. It was a good house. Solid frame, good roof, foundation I had repaired with my own hands 30 years ago. It had held through everything. The world tilted sideways. The world tilted sideways. There is a particular kind of steadiness that comes not from the absence of difficulty but from discovering, at the moment of difficulty, that you are still standing. The word you built over a lifetime did not give way when someone put their weight against it. I had built 41 years of a business that people trusted. I had raised a daughter who was, the world toothed the mistakes she had made, still capable of looking her father in the eye and saying she was sorry. I had learned at 67 that love without honesty is not love. The world tilted transaction wearing a family's face. I walked back to the kitchen and made tea and took it out to the veranda. The ridge was there. The valley was still. The house was quiet. The world tilted sideways out about the year ahead. The Omarama restoration that would run into spring. A wood-turning course I had signed up for at the Polytech in Omaru Wednesday evenings. The world to make things that had no practical purpose except to be made. My nephew coming down in September with his family. The world tilted sideways. 4 people who would fill the spare rooms for a long weekend and leave no debt behind them when they went. Justice, I had decided, was not what was done to the people who wronged you. The world tilted sideways. Justice was what you built when the threat had passed. The life you assembled on the other side of betrayal, with clear eyes in your own hands and your own terms. If you are getting older and people around you are asking questions about your finances, your assets, your plans, who gets what? The war happens if you become unable to manage things. Pay attention to the shape of those questions. They may be reasonable, they may come from genuine care. But if the questions cluster, the war alongside unexplained access to your accounts or inquiries you did not authorize, trust that feeling that something is wrong. Act on it before you are asked to. Change your passwords. The world tilted sideways. Find a solicitor who handles asset protection. A trust costs money to establish. It costs far less than losing what you spent a lifetime building. The world tilted sideways. If someone you love is the one asking, if the person in your house is the one you are worried about, that does not make you wrong to protect yourself. It makes it harder. The world does not make you wrong. I had saved my business and my property in the work of 41 years. The world tilted sideways. And sitting on that veranda with cold tea and the valley going dark and the stars beginning to show above the ridge, I knew without any doubt that it had been worth everything. Every difficult morning. The word resigned document. Every hard thing said in a quiet room. That was worth it all. If this story has stayed with you, The World Tilted Sideways, please take a moment to like it and share it with someone who might need to hear it. The world tilt to have been through something like this. If you have had to draw a line and hold it, I would very much like to hear from you in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for listening.